The courtroom fell into a stunned silence, every eye fixed on Pam Bondi as Judge Frank Caprio banged his gavel. "I'm charging you $1 million, he declared sharply, voice echoing through the room. Whispers rippled like a wave. Just 2 minutes later, everything shifted. A confession, tears, and a story that no one expected. It was a moment that transformed the whole court, reminding everyone that justice is more than dollars and cents. Stay with us and comment where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss these unforgettable courtroom moments. Pam Bondi entered the courtroom with the kind of calm confidence that comes from years of commanding respect in legal halls and public offices. Her posture was upright, her step measured but purposeful, as if each footfall echoed a lifetime of courtroom battles fought and won. She wore her trademark sharp navy suit, a style she had perfected over years of public appearances, though today, even that polished image seemed touched with a hint of vulnerability. Her face, usually composed and resolute, softened just enough to reveal a small, almost shy smile that betrayed a flicker of nerves beneath the surface. The air inside the courtroom was thick with anticipation. The seats were filled with familiar faces, local reporters, curious onlookers, and longtime community members, many of whom had followed Pam Bondi's career from her early days as Florida's Attorney General. She was known as a fierce advocate, a woman who fought tooth and nail for justice in some of the state's most high-profile cases. Her name carried weight, and many here had once seen her as untouchable, a figure of authority and integrity. But today, the roles were reversed. Pam Bondi wasn't the prosecutor commanding the courtroom or the iron-willed leader of a legal crusade. Today, she was the defendant. The realization settled over the room like a sudden hush. What brought a figure of her stature to this vulnerable position? That question hung in the air as all eyes turned to her. Judge Frank Caprio, known for his warm demeanor and thoughtful approach, leaned forward in his seat. Adjusting his glasses with a gentle smile, he broke the silence with a quip that lightened the mood just enough to break the tension. "Ms. Bondi, it's not often we see you standing here on this side of the bench," he said, his eyes twinkling with good-natured humor. Pam chuckled softly, the sound delicate but genuine. The judge's friendly tone was a welcome relief amid the weight of the courtroom's serious atmosphere. She took a slow breath, settling into her seat at the defendant's table. As her fingers lightly tapped the surface before her, she glanced up at the judge and admitted quietly, "Your Honor, I never imagined I'd be here like this." Her voice was steady, carrying the quiet strength of a seasoned attorney, but it was tinged with humility. A reminder that even the strongest among us face moments of uncertainty and vulnerability. The bailiff's sharp call brought the room to order, and the murmurs that had floated through the crowd quickly subsided. The case about to unfold was complex, one that had rippled through the community and raised more than a few eyebrows. At the center of it was a charitable foundation that Pam Bondi had chaired for several years, a foundation with a mission close to her heart, created to support underprivileged children and families across Florida. Yet, allegations had surfaced accusing the foundation of financial mismanagement, accusations that seemed almost inconceivable given Pam's reputation for integrity and meticulousness. The news had shocked many, sparking conversations about how even the most trusted leaders can face challenges that threaten their legacies. As Pam sat in that courtroom, she seemed to carry the weight of those accusations as heavily as anyone. But there was also a quiet determination in her eyes, a readiness to face whatever questions came her way, and to tell her side of the story. Around her, the courtroom buzzed with a mixture of skepticism, curiosity, and cautious hope. Would the truth reveal mistakes made with good intentions, or would it uncover something darker? The tension was palpable, Yet beneath it lay the human story of a woman who had built a career on upholding the law, now navigating the precarious path of defending herself. The judge's opening words to the courtroom reflected the gravity of the moment, but also his characteristic fairness. "We're here today not just to look at numbers or paperwork," he said gently, "but to understand the full picture. What happened, why it happened, and what justice looks like in this case." Pam's gaze met his, and in that silent exchange, there was a shared understanding that this was more than a legal proceeding. It was a moment where accountability met compassion and where the truth could emerge, not just in cold facts, but in the humanity behind those facts. As the proceedings prepared to begin, the community watched closely, waiting to see how this chapter would unfold. And Pam Bondi, once a formidable figure standing on the side of justice, now prepared to stand in the spotlight, not as the judge, but as the one judged. Judge Frank Caprio cleared his throat softly, setting a calm tone that filled the courtroom. "Ms. Bondi," he began, his voice warm and measured, "the court recognizes your long history of public service and commitment to the community. Let's start from the beginning. Please explain what exactly happened with the foundation under your leadership." Pam Bondi took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts as she faced the court. "Thank you, Your Honor. The foundation was established with a mission very close to my heart, to provide educational resources and support to underprivileged children across Florida. It was meant to be a beacon of hope for families struggling to make ends meet." Her eyes scanned the courtroom, then she continued with a tinge of regret. "Unfortunately, in recent years, the financial oversight that should have been in place started to slip. Mistakes were made, administrative errors, delays in reports, some unaccounted transactions. But I want to be clear, there was no intent to deceive or steal." At that moment, the prosecutor, a poised young lawyer named Ms. Gomez, rose and approached the bench with a stack of documents. "Your Honor, if I may," she said, her tone professional yet firm, "the prosecution presents evidence of several questionable transactions amounting to nearly $1 million over a 3-year period. These transactions lack proper authorization and documentation." Judge Caprio took the papers and gave them a quick glance. Then, setting them down, he addressed Ms. Gomez. "I understand the gravity of these numbers, counsel. But can you help the court understand how this situation unfolded? It's not every day that a charitable organization loses $1 million without explanation." Ms. Gomez nodded. "Certainly, Your Honor. The evidence suggests a pattern of lax controls and oversight, allowing for unauthorized expenditures to go unnoticed. Our position is that these failures point to negligence at the leadership level." Judge Caprio turned back to Pam Bondi. "Ms. Bondi, you've mentioned the foundation's financial oversight slipped. Can you explain what you believe caused that?" Pam shifted slightly in her seat, then replied, "There was a trusted accountant who managed the day-to-day bookkeeping. I depended heavily on her reports and updates. I'm not a financial expert, and I didn't have the expertise to detect discrepancies early on. I trusted that the numbers were accurate." The judge nodded thoughtfully. "It's a common challenge in many organizations, trusting the right people but lacking the means to verify every detail. Counsel for the defense, would you like to add anything?" Pam's defense attorney, a calm and composed woman named Ms. Reynolds, stood and addressed the court. "Your Honor, my client took swift and decisive action as soon as she became aware of irregularities. All questionable spending was immediately halted, and Ms. Bondi has cooperated fully with investigators throughout this process. She has been transparent and committed to rectifying the situation." Judge Caprio motioned for the next witness. "Very well. Let's hear from the person directly involved in managing these accounts." The courtroom watched intently as the former accountant was sworn in. The woman appeared nervous, wringing her hands, her eyes darting as she faced the judge and attorneys. When asked about her role, she admitted to poor bookkeeping practices and a lack of proper documentation. "I'm sorry for the mistakes I made," she said quietly. "There was no intention to commit fraud or steal funds. I simply failed to keep accurate records." Judge Caprio's face softened into a gentle smile. "Well, that's a messy situation, but unfortunately not unheard of in charitable organizations. Errors happen, even with the best of intentions." A ripple of light laughter spread through the courtroom. The judge's ability to humanize the proceedings eased the tension, allowing everyone to breathe a little easier. Ms. Gomez quickly regained composure and nodded. "Your Honor, while these mistakes may not have been criminal in nature, the lack of oversight is alarming and must be addressed to protect the public's trust." Judge Caprio nodded solemnly. "Absolutely. Protecting the public and preserving trust in our institutions is paramount. We will carefully weigh these facts as the case unfolds." The courtroom settled into a more reflective mood as the layers of the case began to reveal themselves, a complex interplay of human error, misplaced trust, and the consequences that ripple through a community when things go wrong. Yet, beneath the legal jargon and evidence, there was a clear undercurrent. This was not just about money. It was about accountability, responsibility, and ultimately, justice. Pam's voice softened noticeably as she leaned slightly forward, her usual composure giving way to a more vulnerable tone. "Your Honor," she began, "this foundation wasn't just another project on my resume. It was my passion, a cause that gave me purpose beyond the courtroom. I wanted to give back, to make a real difference in the lives of children and families who needed help." Her gaze flickered downward briefly, then rose again with a hint of moisture shining in her eyes. "But the past few years, they were incredibly difficult. I was battling breast cancer. Between chemotherapy sessions and doctor appointments, I was trying to keep everything afloat, including this foundation." A hush fell over the courtroom. The air seemed to thicken with empathy as the judge, jury, and audience absorbed this unexpected personal revelation. Pam's voice trembled slightly, her vulnerability laid bare. "I was scared, Your Honor. Scared that my mistakes, no matter how unintentional, would destroy the trust people had placed in me and, more importantly, in the foundation itself. I feared I'd let down the very people I was trying to help." For a moment, the weight of those words hung heavily in the air. Even the prosecutor, Ms. Gomez, who had been so firm and unyielding moments before, looked softened, her stern expression melting into one of genuine concern. Judge Caprio's eyes remained gentle but attentive. "Ms. Bondi, thank you for sharing that. It's important for the court to understand the full person behind the case." Next, the court called a close friend and longtime confidant of Pam's to testify. The witness, a woman with kind eyes and a steady voice, took the stand and spoke with heartfelt sincerity. "I was there through all of it," she said. "Pam spent countless sleepless nights trying to fix the foundation's problems while she was undergoing treatment. I saw her on her worst days, exhausted, in pain, but still focused on making sure the foundation kept moving forward." She paused, then continued. "She wasn't perfect. None of us are. But her heart was always in the right place. She cared deeply, even when things got overwhelming." The courtroom absorbed these intimate details, the story moving beyond financial reports and legal arguments into the realm of human struggle and resilience. Judge Caprio nodded slowly. "This case is about much more than figures on a ledger. It's about a person's fight against illness, against adversity, and the impact that fight has on all aspects of life." The emotional depth in the courtroom grew, not from drama or spectacle, but but from the real, raw truths of a person striving to do good despite overwhelming challenges. As the witness stepped down, the mood shifted. The legal battle was far from over, but now it was clear that this was a story about compassion, responsibility, and the human spirit caught in the crossfire. Judge Caprio leaned back in his chair, fingers interlaced thoughtfully before him, his gaze steady but contemplative. The courtroom seemed to quiet even further, as if everyone instinctively recognized the gravity of the moment. A pause not just for judgment, but for reflection. "Here we have a woman," he began, his voice calm but carrying weight, "who dedicated decades to public service, championing causes that touch the lives of so many. A woman who poured her heart into a foundation created to uplift children and families in need. Yet, mistakes, costly mistakes, were made under her watch." He glanced around the courtroom, his eyes softening as they met those of the defendant, the prosecution, and even the spectators. "The law is clear. Accountability must be upheld. We cannot allow negligence to go unchecked, especially when public trust and charitable resources are at stake. But justice is more than just rules and penalties. It is also a measure of our humanity." A hush fell as Judge Caprio paused, his words hanging thoughtfully in the air. "We must ask ourselves, is this a case of criminal negligence, a willful disregard for responsibility? Or is this instead a tragic oversight, a failure born not from ill intent, but from the overwhelming burden of leadership, compounded by personal trials?" His tone softened, voice almost reflective. "How do we balance protecting the public and ensuring that those who serve our communities are held to the highest standards without ignoring their genuine remorse and efforts to make things right?" Judge Caprio's eyes searched the courtroom, as if inviting every person present to wrestle with the dilemma. Justice demands clarity, but it also requires compassion. The challenge lies in finding the line where accountability meets understanding. He leaned forward slightly, fingers still clasped, voice steady and sincere. "This court must look beyond the numbers and the paperwork to the story behind them, the story of a leader who, despite her mistakes, has shown openness and a willingness to correct those errors. A leader who has faced adversity in her personal life while still striving to serve." The judge's reflection wasn't merely an exercise in empathy. It was a deliberate pause to weigh the scales of justice with the full measure of human complexity. The courtroom held its collective breath, knowing that the verdict would not just be about facts, but about what kind of justice this case demanded. Judge Caprio's gaze softened further. "In this chamber, the law meets life in all its imperfect glory, and it is here we must decide. How do we deliver a verdict that honors both?" He fell silent, allowing the courtroom to absorb the profound question, a moment of moral reckoning that transcended the case at hand. Just as the courtroom seemed to hold its breath, bracing for the next phase of judgment, Pam's defense attorney, Ms. Reynolds, stood with renewed determination. With a calm yet assertive tone, she addressed Judge Caprio and the court. "Your Honor, the defense has come into possession of new evidence that fundamentally alters the understanding of this case." She handed over a tablet displaying a series of emails and internal financial records. These documents reveal that the former accountant engaged in deliberate concealment of transactions and manipulated financial reports to hide unauthorized expenditures. A murmur rippled through the courtroom as the judge and attorneys leaned in to examine the records. The emails showed clear attempts by the accountant to mislead both the foundation's leadership and investigators, including deleted transaction logs and backdated reports. Ms. Reynolds continued, "This was no mere oversight or innocent bookkeeping error. It was a calculated breach of trust by someone whom Ms. Bondi had relied on implicitly. The responsibility for these actions lies with the individual who committed them, not with my client." Judge Caprio's eyes narrowed thoughtfully as he scanned the documents. Ms. Gomez, prosecution, have you had the opportunity to review these records? The prosecutor nodded slowly, her expression shifting from confident to contemplative. Yes, Your Honor. I must acknowledge that these findings are significant. They introduce a new dimension to the case that must be thoroughly investigated. She turned toward the courtroom, her tone measured but sincere. While the initial allegations focused on negligence at the leadership level, this evidence suggests the possibility of criminal misconduct by a trusted employee. We are committed to following the facts wherever they lead. The atmosphere in the courtroom transformed. What had begun as a straightforward case of financial mismanagement now unfolded into a deeper investigation into deception and betrayal. The courtroom buzzed with renewed energy, not of accusation, but of pursuit for truth. Judge Caprio tapped his gavel lightly, calling the room to order. This court recognizes the gravity of these revelations. Our task is now to determine not only where responsibility lies, but also how justice can be served for all parties involved. The focus shifted. The case was no longer just about Pam Bondi's leadership, but about uncovering the true source of the financial loss and ensuring that those responsible are held accountable. As whispers and exchanges filled the courtroom, the story took a dramatic turn, reminding everyone present that justice is rarely simple, often complicated by hidden truths and unexpected twists. Judge Caprio's steady presence anchored the proceedings as the courtroom prepared to move forward with this critical new chapter. Judge Caprio fixed his warm, steady gaze on Pam Bondi. The courtroom quieted instantly, every ear attuned to the weight of his words. Ms. Bondi, he began gently, this court has witnessed not only the challenges you've faced professionally, but also the personal hardships that have tested your spirit. He paused, allowing the depth of those hardships to settle in. We see your dedication to public service, your commitment to the Foundation's mission, and the genuine remorse you've expressed. That transparency and cooperation speak volumes about your character. The judge's voice grew firmer, underscoring the principle that justice must be both fair and measured. Justice is about truth, and accountability is essential. However, punishment must also fit the nature and intent of the wrongdoing. This court recognizes the difference between willful deceit and tragic mismanagement. He turned to address the broader courtroom, his tone resolute but compassionate. We will hold those responsible for the deliberate misconduct fully accountable, but we will also protect those who strive to do good, even when faced with adversity. Judge Caprio's expression softened as he laid out the resolution. In light of the new evidence and your cooperation, the court will impose a symbolic fine, significantly less than the initial charges proposed. More importantly, you will work directly with this court and designated advisors to restore the Foundation's integrity. There was a murmur of approval from the courtroom, a collective sense of relief mingling with respect. The judge continued, "This painful chapter will become an opportunity for renewal, not just for the Foundation, but for the community it serves. It is a chance to rebuild trust through transparency, diligence, and shared responsibility." He looked again at Pam, a gentle smile touching his lips. "Mistakes, even costly ones, do not have to define us. What defines us is how we respond, how we rise after a fall, how we seek to make things right." The courtroom felt the gravity of this moment, not just a legal ruling, but a reminder of justice tempered with mercy and the power of second chances. Judge Caprio concluded, "This court's decision reflects the complexities of life and law. It reflects our belief that fairness includes compassion and that true justice heals rather than only punishes." As the gavel came down, a sense of closure began to settle, opening the door to a hopeful future born from honest reckoning and a renewed commitment to serve. Pam Bondi's story resonates far beyond the walls of this courtroom. It reminds us that behind every legal case lies a deeply human life, full of struggles, hopes, and imperfections that don't always fit neatly into black and white categories. This was never just about numbers or missteps. It was about a woman who dared to dedicate herself to a cause greater than herself, even while facing overwhelming challenges both inside and outside the courtroom. Judge Caprio's courtroom stands as a beacon for more than just punishment. It is a place where mercy finds its voice, where understanding tempers judgment, and where second chances are more than hopeful ideals. They are practiced realities. Here, the law is a tool not just for enforcement, but for healing. In our fast-paced world, it's easy to rush to judgment, to see only the surface and miss the layers beneath. Pam's case teaches a vital lesson, that justice requires patience, a willingness to listen deeply, and a readiness to see beyond mistakes to the people who make them. Sometimes, the hardest justice to deliver is not the harshest. Sometimes, it's found in kindness, in grace, and in the quiet acknowledgement that all of us are fallible, and all of us deserve the chance to make things right. This case stands as a testament to the power of compassion within the judicial system, a reminder that the gavel's true strength lies not in its force, but in the heart behind it. If this story touched you, comment below where you're watching from and share your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe for more real-life inspired courtroom tales with heart and hope. Justice isn't just about law, it's about people. Thanks for watching.